Watch out.
Let's see here. Are we live? We are live, and let me go live on Instagram.
How's my audio? Is it still all right? I took the headphones off.
You sound fine.
Okay.
Hey, everybody. So, for those who are watching this later, we are starting the recording now. For those who are watching live, we're going to give everybody a few minutes to get here and just BS for a little bit like we always do. If anybody wants to go to their page and share it, actually, I think there's a way with the upgrade to StreamYard. If anybody, I guess specifically JT, Cody, or Audrey wants to stream to their own page, I know there's a way to do it where you can add your own personal stream like it'll show up as though you're going live on your own page. I don't know how to do it because I don't have that mechanism on my end.
I see a button. I'm going to take a chance and hit it and see.
Take a chance. Let's see what it does. In the meantime, we'll let our icebreaker question be a continuation from our previous conversation, which is how do you like your pizza? And that's both in terms of toppings, style, any other characteristics that are important to you. Michael, since we know your live feed is straight, do you want to go ahead and start?
Wasn't this the icebreaker from last week?
No, last week we did beverages.
We're just going to work a way around a meal right now.
Next week, dessert. Stick around.
Good idea. Somebody remind me of that. We'll do that next week. So,
yeah, I'm a fan of the thin crust. But I also like the deep dish. I'm not really, over here, listen, let me just explain. My wife finally admitted to me that when I'm out of town and on tour, she survives on frozen pizzas from Speedway.
No.
And my wife has the most developed palate of anybody that I know.
Yeah.
But she's not a snob. She knows the difference and she enjoys it for what it is. And that's kind of the MO around this house, is we know when we're eating inferior, product, we just don't really care. Sometimes. Sometimes we do. Oftentimes we don't. We aim just for that. Because sometimes what some people consider gourmet can be a letdown.
That's for real.
You know what I mean? Just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's good.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'll say on that.
Audrey, did you figure out your stream?
I have to create an account and sync it up ahead of time. So
okay. Well, you can just go to my page or the MUSiPOLiTiX page and just share it if you like.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Okay. Well, while she's doing that, Cody, got any answers to the icebreaker question?
Yes, I like Italian pizza, and it's hard to get in the United States because U.S. pizza is a little bit different. So the closest thing for me is punch. And I get it par baked and then finish it at home. I don't like sitting in a place eating pizza. So,
so when you say Italian, do you mean Neapolitan?
No, he means Italian. The way they make pizza in Italy.
Yeah, but the way they make pizza depends on where you are in Italy too. And pizza in Naples is pretty.
See, in Napoli too. I could do either Napolitano or I could do Barese. Either one. They're just a little bit different. Pizza in Bari has a little more semolina on the bottom, and so it's a little more croccant or more crisp, and I like that. But the pizza from Napoli is really close. It's very good, but it's hard to get here. So the closest thing is punch.
Yeah, and let me tell you something, because I just had a flashback. I had a piece of white pizza from some delivery service when we were in Via Reggio. And it was the most amazing. The guy came on a moped.
Yep.
Hey, everybody, yeah, see, the pizza, yeah, Pele out here, And it was no meat. It was just like a thin layer of cheese, sauce, and and crust, and it blew my mind, man.
Yeah.
So again, it's a sliding scale. In Italy, that pizza was probably garbage. To the people who live there.
Fewer ingredients is what happens in Italian pizza, and that's what I like. American pizza, they can put so much on it.
Yeah, they keep stacking it.
Yeah.
And I had one experience. We were at a place called La Lucciola in Via Reggio, and our tour manager, Enrico D'Alessandro, he was the pickiest eater I ever saw. And he ate so kind of direct and without any sort of pretense. Like he liked things very basic, not messy. And they had a tuna and onions pizza on the menu. And I was like, whoa, I want that. And he was like, that is not pizza. Michele, that is not pizza. I'm telling you, that how can you eat that? I said, it's on the menu, man. It was, how is it not pizza? He just, his sensibilities were completely, he was done with me. But when he came to visit in Minneapolis, he would steal away. He came with with Georgia, this Italian artist that we've worked with before. He came with Georgia and his father, Mimo, and a bunch of Italians. And of course, they went to any Italian restaurant they could get to. They went to Zalo. They went to, what's the place? Kitty Corner from Bunkers.
Italian?
What is it? The Italian restaurant that right across. What is that called? It's, oh man. Why am I?
Also, I don't know the one that the
Chef Isaac has it. It's Kitty Corner from Bunkers. It's right on that corner there. Bar La Grassa.
Okay.
Bar La Grassa. They went, oh yes, oh no, we very much enjoy. They're going to all the Italian restaurants and kind of
That's
rating.
what I was going to ask. Which ones did they like?
Zalo, they said, was the best. But when Enrico was by himself and like on his own for lunch, he was stealing away and going to the Loon and having the barbecued pork sandwich. The messiest thing you can get on the menu. Right. He had the worst Jones for this sandwich that got all over his hands and his face. So something happened, I guess. He said, hey, man, I don't know. I can't help it. I dream of these sandwich every morning, and by the afternoon, I'm there. So I don't know if that sandwich just broke his will, because the Loons got the Loons got great food. They always did. But that was the secret he kept from everybody else while they were visiting here from Italy. Anyway, we should probably get on with the show.
Yeah, we got 2 more minutes for the icebreaker.
Okay,
I was gonna say
JT or somebody else, because I
was gonna ask though, because it sounds like Cody's been to Italy. I know you have, and I have. Audrey and JT, have you been to Italy?
I've not. I've been
So
to
the
France.
the top row has been to Italy, and we've got like a line of demarcation.
Yeah.
Where did you go in Italy?
Me?
Yeah.
I was on tour there for about 2 months in 2010. That was my only really long tour outside of the U.S. We did 2 stops in the U.K. and the rest of it was in Italy. And you know what being on tour is like. So I know we ate some amazing food and stopped some amazing places, but for the life of me, I can't remember any of it. Like I just remember the entirety of it was amazing, but it all ran together after a while, and you don't sleep much, and when you do, it's on the tour bus. So like none of it, like if you try to ask me, oh, what was your favorite thing you ate there, or what was the pizza like there compared to here, all I know is, and back then I was a lot skinnier but I ate more food than I've ever eaten before, and I lost 10 pounds.
That's right. Again, it's the quality of ingredients. American food is built to kill you. And ever since my consciousness was raised enough to realize that, I've been trying to remove certain things. I don't know when's the last time we had McDonald's. Part of it is also the war and all those people supporting somebody.
Yeah.
So
you're not wrong, Michael. You're raising a lot of good points.
Listen, controversy and we're like that. Somehow I just end up talking about serious things because it's the way my mind works. I don't have time for a lot of frivolity.
Well, that was kind of the incubation for this show in the first place, is you and I would have these conversations that I would have them with other people, but they wouldn't be the same. And I was like, this is something that the world needs to be exposed to. This is something that needs to exist beyond just me and Michael. And
God bless you. I appreciate that. And I know JT was also like, hey man, JT was a real supporter, and I didn't realize I had so many important things to say until JT said so.
Yeah. I mean, it's not just you; it's you and the company you keep, and the interactions between us. Because you and JT have similar conversations to the ones you and I have, and it's.
Then we also got Soul Asylum conversations, which are crazy.
Oh, I'm sure.
We get way out there for a bunch of different reasons.
Yes, there's many reasons to go way out. Not a whole lot of reasons to come back.
Real quick, JT and Audrey, do you want to hit the icebreaker question, and then we can go ahead and get started, or do you guys?
I mean, since we were talking about controversy, I feel like someone's got to bring up pineapple. So I'm happy to be that person. I like a savory and I like a sweet, and when you put them together, I'm all over it. So a Hawaiian, some kind of sweet barbecue type thing. Thumbs up, baby. Yeah.
I'm in.
I'm in with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
my answer's pretty boring. I'm just happy when there just still is pizza. There's nothing worse than getting to the room after doing whatever and being like,
yeah,
one piece of crust
pizza
left,
for you.
Pizza.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not too picky. I like if the ingredients are equally balanced. I don't want it to be way too cheesy or way too saucy. As long as there's kind of equal parts of, somewhat normal ingredients and or toppings, I'm in. Hot, cold, don't care.
So
I got that.
Unless Michael or Cody has any objections, what I'd like to do, because everybody else here has been here before in one form or another, but this is Audrey's first time, and she was actually technically supposed to be a guest during our first season, but we had only so many episodes and so on and so forth. If you guys don't object, I'd kind of like to start with her in the way we used to start when we would have a specific guest, which is kind of just to ask you a little bit about your background and how you got into audio engineering, and especially with the juxtaposition of our show, less so this mini-series, but in general having a lot to do with equity and a lot to do with social justice and politics and things like that, and you being a woman, a queer woman in a predominantly straight male field. I'd love to know a little bit about how you became, because I don't know if everybody here knows you or knows who you are, your credits, but you're quite well regarded and at this point in your career, and you're already pretty young, so you've done quite a lot in a short period of time, which had to be particularly interesting coming from a different demographic than would normally. So if you don't mind just starting out a little bit and telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into audio engineering, and then we'll let Michael and Cody take over with the points that we specifically want to address.
Yeah, right on. Well, thank you. Excited to be here. So I have always been interested in music. I thought I wanted to be a choir teacher. I was in all the choirs and all of the bands, rocking the bass clarinet, and through taking like voice lessons and stuff, that was kind of my first journey into doing any kind of recording, because you record your voice and hear what the audience perspective is and how is your diction coming across, and just is what you think actually happening. And so I started kind of dabbling with that, and then it was right about then that I learned that was even a career that people had. It just hadn't really occurred to me that people like record music for a living. And so I got really interested in just pursuing that and decided to go to college for that. And through college, I was the only woman in all of my classes. And I kind of had this, I still do have this attitude of like, if you tell me I can't do something, you're going to watch me do it tenfold. So I just really spent all of the time that I wasn't working, sleeping, whatever, just in the studio at school, just practicing and experimenting and trying to play with sound in all these ways, and just learning. Near the end of college, this local studio in town called Audio for the Arts, which is where I'm at right now, was looking for interns. And they do a lot of, classical music, acoustic music, jazz, that sort of stuff. And that really overlapped with my musical pursuits when I was in high school. I was taking opera voice lessons and playing the clarinet. So it just felt like a really good match when I came in for an internship. And my first kind of assignment was to label all these unlabeled sound effects. So I spent hours just playing a sound effect and being like, okay, medium explosion and broken glass and debris, now smaller explosion, and so it was just really fun to do that. And that really triggered this like weird curiosity that I kind of already had, but then it pushed it into this other realm. And and then I started doing some of the office stuff here too, because through college, my degree is in music production, but then also entertainment and media business. So I started kind of handling the business side and engineering like half and half. And then one of the owners left to go work at Wisconsin Public Radio. He's now their technical director. One of my mentors named Steve Gotcher. And when he left, that left an opening for someone to step in as one of the new owners. So I took that opening and began engineering full time and hired someone else to do the office stuff. And at the time, it was just 3 of us. And now we've got 6 people here and 4 of them are women. And it's really exciting to be able to kind of shift the balance a little bit to get some more just voices that aren't really represented, as you said, in the audio community. Because one of the things that's so important to me is like, if you're going to record someone making music, their song, there's a lot of vulnerability with that. And so if I were to walk into unnamed studio, this is an actual place in Madison, and there's like Fox News blaring on the TV and the engineer is like, engaging with that content, I'm not comfortable there. I'm not going to want to make music there. I'm not going to feel like I can fully share my story. So I really wanted to create a place where that was so far away from what I was doing that we just were not even marketing to the same people, not even trying for the same clientele. I was trying to give a home to people who don't really have one. Now I'm one of the owners and just doing all sorts of stuff, super busy, meeting a lot of really amazing people, doing a lot of classical music, a lot of orchestra recording, jazz. I've got the opera coming up. So I'm, super happy and just living the dream right now, really. It's super cool.
I feel like you almost kind of touched on Michael's overarching topic there, but before he gets in with that, I did have a couple of follow-up questions because I didn't know that your staff is majority female now. Yeah. So where especially now that Madison Media Institute, I believe, is closed, yes. Where are you finding female engineers to hire?
Yeah, so let's see. One of them was actually one of my students. So I teach at UW-Madison and at Edgewood College. And I teach music production and audio engineering. So one of our newest employees, Tori, came from Edgewood. She was one of my, students in class, and she just was super smart, really about it. And I was like, that's like a good energy to have in a studio. So brought her aboard. Another colleague, Stephanie, she was out in New York. She actually went to NYU for electrical engineering. And then ended up working at Frank Productions in their hospitality. So I was like, that's a cool like combination to have someone who's into the electrical side of it, but then also is like very attentive to the needs of artists. And so, we brought her on. She actually just hit us up looking for a spot to work, and we liked her and we all got along and it was great. And then M. Shays, or Meggie, is our other woman who works here, and she engineers for us. She also works at the Burr Oak and Crystal Corner, 2 venues in town here. And she's a musician, so she's got that songwriter perspective, wants to be a producer. So each of these people kind of do different things. And I think when we come together, we're like the Avengers. We have this like team that's just really great. And like, no matter who could come in, like if I'm gonna admit if I'm not a match for somebody, but then maybe we got someone else here who is. So we're all working together like that.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is, and I've seen mentioned in a number of articles, so if this is wrong, I've been repeating it all this time, but I believe you're the first female contributor to Pro Tools.
Yeah, so Pro Tools Expert and Production Expert is like a website blog, and I was their first like regular female contributor.
So is that another thing that came through teaching, or how did you get that?
I love this story. So that was, I have been just like a follower of their Facebook page and Facebook groups and stuff. I kind of lurk around in all these AV spaces that are online. And they posted an article that was like, the problem with women in audio is that there are none. And I was like, yes, that is exactly the problem. But people were commenting like, yeah, it's because women don't hear things as well. And it's because of, all of, I'm like, what are you even saying? It just didn't make sense. So me being the person I am, I see that and I'm like, well, I'm a woman who knows how to write and knows how to engineer. So I will put those things together. And so I hit up Pro Tools Expert, and I just was like, you want to hire more women to write for you? Let me write for you. And they're like, okay, give me 6 article ideas. So I sent them 10 back, and they loved each of them and said, okay, here's your first one, start writing it. And then I was like, just kind of went on from there. I haven't written for them for a while. I write for MUSiPOLiTiX now more often. But we're all, still good friends. Sometimes I'm on their podcast as well. But yeah, I love how that came about.
Well, those were my introductory questions. And like I said, I think you already kind of touched on the overarching topic of this series. So I'm happy to hand off to Michael and Cody, unless also we didn't really touch on Cody's background last time. And I don't know how much we talked about JT's in the past. So if either of you guys want to give a little background story as well, I love hearing that stuff always. But either way, I'm going to shut up now. Let you guys run with it.
Go ahead, Cody.
Oh, everyone. I'm just, a bar sound guy that's been running sound for a long time. I've worked for quite a few people, some of them really good. A lot of
the other ones.
right. The early parts of my musical career were with avant-garde jazz artists, and so that's how I ended, because we were talking about Italy. That's how I ended up going to Italy often, because I would do a avant-garde jazz festival there every year, go stay for a month and be the house engineer. And that was with my brother and a guy named Steve Tibbetts. My brother's Mark Anderson. He's a percussionist, and Steve Tibbetts is an avant-garde jazz guitarist who's from Madison.
I was going to say, they probably have heard
I know him.
Yeah. So I'm Steve's sound guy. So
That's awesome.
that's some background. How about you, Jeremy? What you got?
It's funny. There's a lot of Madison going around here.
That's right. Let's do some more.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I grew up. I'm the son of a musician, so I was on the side of the stage tuning guitars as young as I can remember, and I grew up around Madison. My dad played in a band with Butch Vig, so
nice.
I also grew up basically in Smart Studios. As far back as I can remember. So I've kind of, from 5 years old, been on the side of the stage or in a studio or learning how to play the drums or play the bass or mix a show or do monitors or figure out how to run the light board because the light guy didn't make it to the gig or whatever. So lifelong stuck rock and roll musician, I guess.
Audrey, have you been around long enough to remember Smart Studios, or was that before your time?
That was kind of before my time, although a lot of their gear is here now, like the speakers behind me. Those big B&Ws were from the upstairs. So we brought those. Well, I didn't. My people before me brought them down the stairs, and they're heavy as heck. So I'm glad I didn't have to do that. But we have like a couch of theirs too, and a speaker that is, I could even run and grab it, but it's a speaker mounted in a basketball hoop to be a sub kick mic. Oh, wow. And that was from Smart. And so we took their creation over here too.
Nice.
Yeah, anybody who's been in Madison for a certain amount of time, Butch and Smart Studios has pretty much everybody. I think if you were a working musician during the time they were open, everybody's recorded there at some point or another. So it's definitely a point of reference. And I always forget, I know that JT has Milwaukee ties, but I always forget that he has Madison ties. And I don't know why that. I guess because I don't think I've ever seen him in Madison. Like, we never crossed paths here.
That's fair enough. I split. Yeah, I was Milwaukee until halfway through 8th grade. And then I switched and finished 8th grade at Georgia O'Keeffe.
I know O'Keeffe.
East High School. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then I went to East. And actually, my first job, outside of I worked at my uncle's auto parts store for a little while, But there was a place on the end of State Street called the New Loft that was like kind of a teen center. During the day and weekends they had shows, and I would constantly go to shows and got to know everybody. And then I was the front of house guy at the Loft. Absolutely no qualifications other than I had grown up around musical equipment, and they're like, "Can you run all this stuff?" Like, "Oh yeah, absolutely,
For sure.
no problem." So,
Are you
yeah.
talking about when it was just off state on Fairchild Street, or was it?
Yes. Yep.
I have a lot of memories there too. At one point, it was called the Downtown Arts and Activities Center,
Okay. Yeah.
and but before and after that, it was the Loft, because then when they
Yep.
moved to East Washington, they took the Loft name back.
There you go.
But that was part of the block that was torn down to build the Overture Center.
Yeah,
and
I walked down there I was just down in Madison in December for
and he still doesn't
Billy
come see
song.
me,
Oh, sorry.
or Audrey for that matter.
I wasn't a couple
know.
Decembers ago, but I walked around down there and I tried to figure out where the Loft was, and I couldn't figure it out. It was that different down on the end of State Street now. I guess it had been that many years.
There's like a Target down there now too.
Yeah, it was just
feels
like
wrong.
it was down here, right here, I think. But I'm looking around and it did not feel familiar. So
Yeah, I might be one of the only people that really misses the old Madison Civic Center. That was one of my favorite venues, and I know the Overture Center is objectively a better venue, but I don't feel like it's so much better for them to have torn down as much as they did, because there was a whole, that's where Daddy's Umplink's Dowry used to be. That's where Rosino's or Rossi's Pizza or whatever, that was the old teen center, like the Loft and Downtown Arts and Activity Center. You know, they gutted a whole block to convert the Civic Center into the Overture Center, and I liked the Civic Center just fine. I did several of my formulative gigs there. So I miss it, but okay. Well, let me pitch to Michael, because I want to make sure we get on and like I said, Audrey already really kind of touched on some different insights than we had last week in terms of opening the door for relationship between a sound crew and artists.
Didn't mean to foreshadow so much.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know this is a series, but so much of the experience is just kind of going off the dome. So I'm not sure what you're really talking about as far as what you're trying to link from last week to this week.
Well, you said last week, as well as in our initial discussions, that the main topic of the series was going to be artist and audio relations between the sound crew and the musicians, whoever's on stage, and especially, I think that my big takeaway from last week is that the engineers, monitor, especially front of house, etc., is supposed to be your biggest advocate in terms of how you sound, and so you're supposed to be working as a team, and far too often, too many of us don't see it that way. And I really liked the way that Audrey brought it up in terms of being able to connect with somebody's art through being able to relate to them. And if you're walking in the door and the engineer's making an impression of somebody that has a drastically different worldview than you do, then sometimes it's going to be a little harder to be vulnerable as an artist than it would be, when you recognize that somebody's, on your team. They're one of your kind. They're on. My wife likes to say in my tribe. But also, I think sometimes you're going to be in situations. Again, I talked last week about how, like, I used to do some festival gigs and tours where you end up with a sound guy and a band that'll probably never see each other again, and it's clear that they aren't on the same page. And so, one question would be, what do you do when what do you do, Audrey, as an example, when you get a red hat wearing MAGA Trump supporter that wants to book audio for the arts and won't take no for an answer, and you have to figure out how to build relationship with this client and serve this client without selling your soul?
I love that question. Because I don't know. I think, first of all, like, we always have a right to say no to stuff. Like, we get it's that time of cycle right now where there's political ads that are happening, and so sometimes we'll get contacted at the studio for this judge or that, whatever, the House of Representatives, like just whoever the elected office is. And if it's something that I don't just like can't cross that bridge, sometimes that bridge is just, it's too far. Like, and the MAGA tribe, like I cannot, I am happy to not work with them. And we just have to kind of decide where that line is for each of us. Like me and my business partner have different lines. Like he's, vegetarian, very like animal rights. And obviously I am too, but his line is not doing any voiceovers for the circus or anything like that. Whereas me, I'm like, whatever, it's the circus. I'll take my kid, like it's fun. And so we just all have a different spot for that. And, if we're ever uncomfortable, we can always say no. But if I am trying to like bridge that gap, like we are all people at the end of the day. Like we all want to feel love. We all want to feel secure. We all want to, succeed. We all have dreams, and so if we take it just down to that very basic level, you can get along with just about anybody. But again, if someone comes in here like trying to be like trans people aren't people, I'm going to be like, you can get out, so it just really depends on the situation for me.
I know you've done a lot of, we were talking a little bit earlier before we went live, in terms of that you've done a lot of sound reinforcement and recording for like the symphony orchestra, which is a very different very much the same, but also very different than doing a loud bar band, which is what a lot of the conversations were about last week, and in terms of issues of stage volume and things like that. But even so, it seems like it'd be just as nitpicky or just as involved to get what you need from musicians that can be very particular about their art. Have you ever had any situations like that where you had kind of an antagonistic experience from someone who you were trying to just get the best of their instrument or their voice or whatever it is, either on tape or out into the audience, but it wasn't, especially in like I said, we talked at great length about like loud venues and stuff like that, but something like the symphony orchestra that's like a very different than that. Have you had one of those type of experiences?
Yeah, well, most of the time when I'm working with an orchestra, they are going to kind of just balance themselves most of the time. Sometimes I'll need to like reinforce a little bit, but my job is to really just be so transparent and hidden, not let the audience know things are being amplified. It's supposed to be a very acoustic atmosphere. Like even I'm running sound for the opera. We load in this weekend. The shows are next weekend. And even in that case, like all this actors are wearing microphones, but I'm only to amplify during dialogue, not during sung passages. So that is going to be, and we'll have to see how it goes in rehearsal. I might need to amplify a little bit, but it's a really acoustic environment. The room is an instrument that's included. It's supposed to be very organic. So my job is to just kind of really stay out of the way. And I think that is hard for some engineers, because we want to make it sound like how we imagine it. We want to like have all of this control over it. But if the maestro doesn't, they want something more organic, you got to just go with that. And I think the other aspect of that is making sure that you understand how the instrument is supposed to sound, and that you and the artist are agreeing on just like the language of it. Because somebody might say, like I had this one gentleman who English was not his first language. And so just making sure we understood things like what reverb is was like just really helped set the pace for the rest of the session. Because for him, he wanted his voice to sound, he kept saying more metal. I want more metal to my voice. And he was thinking like the reflections is what he wanted to hear more of. And so, but he just didn't have the language for that. So if I'm working with somebody and they're trying to describe their tone, I need to first make sure I'm understanding what sonically they're trying to describe to me, and then I can try to achieve that for them. But if we're just not understanding each other, we got to listen to some audio examples together. We got to just get a baseline going first, and then we can make something awesome happen.
And again, JT, Cody, Michael, feel free to interrupt me at any time. But I'm just very curious about this.
I will.
I certainly know you will, and the fact that you haven't means that you also seem to be pretty curious about what she's saying.
No, I don't want to hog the floor, and I mean, Audrey, we'll be here next week. She probably won't. So I'm learning also, and I'm also in my mind sort of comparing her approach to Cody's approach, and where they are similar and where they're different.
There's a difference too. One of the things, Audrey, that I really like that you were talking about is in a lot of theater, I get to do a little bit of theater as well. And in a lot of theater, that is the risk. They'd like it to sound natural. They'll say, I want it to sound natural. I don't want it to sound amplified. And it's, I think for a person doing production, it's difficult. It's a difficult line because if it's partially amplified, it feels like a mistake.
Yes.
When it's not. You feel, or at least I do, I'll amplify dialogue and then pull back for singing, and the singing seems to get really small. And so then you have to make your dialogue less big. So it's so there's sacrifices that you have to make. And that is akin to stage level and mixing around the band. Recently I've been mixing around a lot of bass players, and it's a different approach. And I wouldn't say it's desirable for me anyway. I'd rather have more control than that. But it is a thing that to be good at, right? And it's challenging. It's really challenging.
It's like you got to get out of the wall of sound mentality. Like we need to hear every single thing. It needs to be all right there. But with an orchestra, it's good to know that the French horns are behind the clarinets and stuff. That depth has to be there.
Yes.
My go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
So here's my follow-up question, really to both of you. It was to Audrey, and now it's to Cody too. So let's say you're in that situation where the director or the maestro or conductor, whoever it is that's running the show, they explicitly say they don't want the voices amplified, but when you're listening out in the room and you're mixing out in the room, it's very clear that in order to have the dialogue and the voices be similar, the voices need to be amplified. And in order for the dialogue to be heard, the dialogue needs to be amplified. Thereby, to the transitive properties, the voices do need to be amplified in order for there to be a decent mix. What's your approach? Do you do what they're asking, even if it's not best for the mix? Do you say yes sir, yes ma'am, and then do it anyway, or do you negotiate with them, or what's the approach that you take in that scenario?
You first.
I love this. So the answer is yes to all of that. So their monitoring is very important, and I've had conductors who say I want to hear in my monitors exactly what's going into the mains, but the issue with that is that they're standing 6 feet in front of 100 string players, so they're not hearing it like the audience is hearing it no matter what. So I start with their monitoring and make sure that they're happy with that. And then I like to get somebody who, from his or her team that's also on my team, so in the case of what's coming up, I have the orchestra maestro is going to be in the pit, and then the artistic director for the opera is going to be out in the house. So most of my conversations about balance are probably going to be with her. And then if the maestro conducting is oh, I'm not hearing this, it's just not whatever, if he needs to hear anything different, that's not going to affect the mains at all, probably. I'm a big advocate for having somebody else in the house that the conductor trusts, who can back me up when I'm believing that, okay, if I do need to amplify the singing as well, otherwise it just sounds weak in comparison to the dialogue, then I have an advocate who can back me up on that too if I need it. But I hope it won't come to that.
I mean, just again, juxtaposing this conversation with last week's conversation and the whole thing about building trust, I'm sure that not every show has the opportunity for something like that, but I love the idea of having somebody from each team working together. So if it's a touring band that's coming in and they're working with Cody, who's never met them before, and they don't trust Cody, but they have their manager who has a good ear and can work with Cody and then can be in front and know that Cody has their best interests, or, that does seem to be, if there's enough personnel to do it, it seems like that's a pretty good way to build trust pretty quickly.
Yeah.
What say you, Cody? Or go ahead, Audrey. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say I think Cody should jump in, but I could imagine a problem that he has is that with a touring band, they're in so many different rooms and stuff, and each room is going to be completely different and need different, treatment and different care with the mix. So just having that third party there, I think, can help like get everyone. Again, it's that baseline, right?
I would say that what you're speaking of is a little bit different venue, actually. Doing orchestra, doing theater, doing dialogue, and then it's just like church. I don't know if you've ever mixed church, but church, there's priorities too. Spoken word is over music in church, and that's not true if I'm mixing Michael's band. That's not how that works. So some of what you're talking about to me, Audrey, is applicable, but it's not in the same basket. Because if Jeremy and Michael are playing on a stage and it's a rock and roll band, even the equipment we're using is quite a bit different.
Yeah.
We're trying to do like a jet plane, and you're trying to blend the house, and it's a different thing. One of the guys that I worked for used to say, "Yeah, I just listen to the roar from back here because there's a machine out in front of you, right, Michael? I'm sure you guys feel that stuff happening. The PA in front of you, you feel it, right? And so that's what really affects monitoring, and so it's kind of turned upside down a little bit. You're trying to make it seems like more people. It's a little bit more, I guess, homogenous, maybe. No, that's not it. That's the wrong word. I don't know. There are different things to me. A little bit. I do a tapper regularly, and I mix tap different than I mix a rock band.
Sure.
They're different disciplines to me, and I like all of them. I mean, I did Rochester's Civic Orchestra. That's the only orchestra I've ever done, and it was fun for me.
The variety is fun.
Yeah. I like to do everything. I like to try to do everything, and I think I'm better at some things than others. Some of what Michael and I were talking about earlier was I guess basically how, if he hits the snare and he's hitting in a certain way, how does that affect me in a room that's 300 seats, and how does it affect me in a room that's 6,000 seats? And so that's, I think, different than when we're talking about the person in the pit directing the singers, right? And then the maestro doing the orchestra. It's a little different situation because the things that Jeremy needs to hear and Michael needs to hear are a little bit different and a little bit more specific, right?
Totally.
You do rock bands, right?
Yeah.
So you know what I'm talking about. And that's, I think, part of what we're trying to eke out is, like, how do you make that? Because it is a little more crusty in rock and roll, I think. And people don't have a lot of time. It sounds like you have time.
Yeah, I'll have several days of like rehearsals leading up to the show, and
we're talking
nothing
5 minutes.
Yeah, totally. It's like plug it in. Do I hear it? Awesome, go.
If I could talk for you for 2 minutes, and you try to be really patient and listen and hear people, but showtime is when showtime is, and so I got a couple of minutes. What do you need, Jeremy? He gives me a list of 3 things. I go, Michael, how you doing? You okay? And then, boom, 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 we fire from there, and I know you know how that is. So. I don't know. I think they're different things, but related, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I think the through line between it is just trying to, like, whatever the vision of the artist is, making that happen. So for rock, we need to feel that kick drum. and that's going to get people kind of moving and maybe get a pit started, and we can have an audience that's going a little crazy. If I do that with the timpani and the orchestra, I'm going to be thrown out of Overture Center.
Right.
It's very different, but it's all just in service of like the project or the artistic vision.
Sure.
I think I was just struck by, I didn't realize how similar it was, working with the orchestra versus working with a rock band or a blues band or an R&B band, when you're talking about balancing the house monitors and stage volume, and then balancing what the musicians need in order to perform their best versus what the engineer needs in order to have the best mix out front. And it almost seems like the same thing but inversed, because with with a louder stage, and then it's about trying to keep things to a level where you can still get the mix you need out front. Whereas when you have the quieter stage with the symphony orchestra and the opera and the singers, it's about, is the stage volume giving you enough to balance when they want the acoustic versus they want the amplified and things like that. So I was struck by how similar it was, and I was not expecting that. And I understand what you're saying, Cody, about how different it is, but I thought it was like much more different than it was. And so that was a huge takeaway.
Orchestras aren't quiet though, Dan.
It's just dynamic.
That's
the thing.
Really freaking loud. It's amazing how loud they get, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's super cool. But they kind of bring right in that case, they bring the orchestra sets the tempo, right? Because they play together a lot, and they're going to play like they play. Period. Right?
Yep. And I kind of mic them as a group, really. Like it's sectional, not like each violin is going to get their own mic. And there's far less monitors than like a rock band. If we're doing rock, we've got drums has a monitor, bass, each of the guitars, piano, everybody has their own monitor. For this, it's going to be a monitor for the conductor that's in the pit, and he's conducting the orchestra, but then also can see the singers. So he's cueing everybody. So he's really the only one with monitoring, and it's basically going to just be the singer's mics that is going in there. And so if he freaks out about hearing them singing, then I'll have to do some, alternate fading for his stuff, that maybe if I feel like the house, we need to hear the singing more, or however the balance is going to work, we're going to have to see during rehearsals and stuff. But that's kind of where my tweaks will be, was just to make his monitor happy. And he's pretty much the only one who's getting anything. This people on stage get the side fills off stage, but that's about it.
Right. And if those are loud, that interrupts what you need to do. So the trick is to keep that back, so it is back a little bit in that way, Dan. So she's keeping your monitors so that the recording or the amplification she's doing, she's not feeding that back through the same sectional mic.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah. And it's tricky.
Yeah.
Someone threw an interesting question up in the comments, which is with the orchestras and the operas and that side of things, do you guys ever use in-ear monitors on stage?
I have used in-ear monitors once for a musical, and that was it. No, they never do. The musical I did it was like an immersive musical. So there was stage left, center, right, and the audience was sitting like within the whole area. And the pit was split between the left and the right stages. So they needed a click track to be able to be with each other. So they had in-ear monitors specifically because there was a click track. But otherwise, we probably wouldn't have done it for that, because they weren't so far away that, they couldn't hear each other. But it's for the click. But otherwise, I've never done in-ears for anything classical.
At this point, I'm feeling like I just want to shadow you for a week or something, because there's so much more. Like, I thought at this point that I've seen a lot of what goes on in music and in recording and in audio and everything like that. And I'm just, some of the stuff you're saying, like, wow, I've never seen that side of things. It's so much, there's like you said when you were giving your introduction, there's just so much more to it than people even ever realize.
Come on down.
I definitely had no idea of like the idea of an immersive experience. But that was here in Madison?
Yeah, just outside in Fitchburg. So it was so immersive. The play itself was set in like 1800s Russia on a farm. So we built out a stage and lights and sound, everything in an actual farm. And people came there to watch the show. And the really tricky thing about that was because it was this whole like 360 environment with actors like coming and going from everywhere, I had to localize them so that people knew where to look to see the actor. So I had 10 speakers around the top, and I would pan each person to the speaker closest to them so that the audience would know where the actor was when they were delivering their lines. So that was the trickiest thing about that whole thing, was just following people and trying to keep up with them as they moved around.
Audrey, what did you use? A matrix mixer, or how did you mix?
Yeah.
Joystick? How do you do that?
No, I was using the pan knob,
Okay.
and I had
Yeah.
it was. I'm sure there was a more smooth way of doing it. I had never done an immersive musical before, but I basically just set all of the left right outputs to be like, you know, the certain sides of the room from my perspective, and then just would pan people kind of across, and there was like a middle that they overlapped. It was wild. I have a little bit of PTSD from it. No big deal.
JT, we haven't heard much from you.
Yeah, same thing. I'm listening, man. I have kind of transitioned in a way. My live sound experience has lately been just a lot more on stage than in front of a stage, and my other sound experience is in the studio, which is, while there is so many similarities between live sound and the recording thing, there's also like so many differences, and just like feedback isn't really a thing in the studio. You know, that's a prime thing to be concerned about in the live world, probably more than anything. And also just like urgency of, oh shit, I have to fix something right now. That's not quite as much of a thing in the studio either. So it's kind of, some of these specific things, I'm just like, wow, I'm lucky that I just sit in the studio and go, hang on a second, something sounds weird. Let's talk about it for a few minutes and get a cup of coffee, and then we'll repatch that and we'll try again. You don't really get that luxury when the show has taken off and it's, you know, all bets are off and it's the same time.
John was saying that there's he's like, I don't have any of these problems.
It's a lot of the same.
I'm in the studio. Whatever I want to happen, I can make it happen.
Right.
So a lot of these things you guys are talking about, I don't.
Yeah,
he didn't identify, but he did say that he has been running his bass rig on wireless when he's playing with that Shabby Road Orchestra, and he's been stepping out front with John Robinson and tweaking and whatnot. So
I think that's okay when you're John Fields. I think for most sound guys, I'm not a front of house sound guy, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but most front of house people probably don't want the bass player with his wireless rig sniffing around out front talking about what they think it sounds like.
I think that if John can play in time out front, we'll play bass in time.
John can play and talk to you.
Go do that.
He could probably like somehow bend over and like push it, you know, and like change the mix while playing. But yeah,
trust me, I could see him easily.
Yeah,
you know,
just
but,
like open E. Hang on, let me just grab that EQ real quick for you. Yeah, thanks.
But Fields is also
in general, most guys, you know, when they come around, most sound guys are probably like, "Okay, buddy, yeah, I got it. Yeah, we'll turn your vocal up. Don't worry about it. You head back up on stage where you belong, and I'll stay out here."
Yeah, but it's hard to set your parameters as a sound guy if the band is paying you though. If the house is paying you, then that's one thing. I mean,
I say that, but I think about it all the time. Like it's unfortunate when you're on stage that you never really get to know what it sounds like in the house. You hear things come up and down, or hear the return off the back wall, and you go, "Oh wow, it's really low endy in here," or "Oh shit, I'm really loud," or whatever. Like, but other than that, you don't really know what's happening. So it's such a different experience to be like, "What did it sound like?" It's like, I don't know. It sounded like my in-ears. You know, it kind of sounds like the same thing every day. And it's interesting that you brought up in-ears, this is a question that I've been kind of thinking about lately. I'm curious what Cody thinks, but we all know like why in-ears came in to play and what all the benefits are supposed to be, with the idea that we can lower stage volumes, and now instead of having these wedges, we can fire it right into our ears. But I wonder if in general, do you feel like bands play more balanced or less balanced now that they have direct in-ear monitors in?
You're asking me?
Yeah. You hear it coming off the stage more than anybody before you start turning things up. Like,
Initially, I would say no.
I'm starting to question if it's beneficial to be able to turn things up and dial in my thing right inside of my ear, and now overlook what's actually happening around me because it's cool in here. Maybe I'm way too bright or way too dark or way too loud, but it's cool in here. You know, like I'm starting to wonder about that quite a bit lately.
I think initially people's when they first go on in-ear are not, it's not better. Once they adapt, and you had this experience just recently, right? With SA, when you went to ears, it's a different thing, right?
There are benefits and there are drawbacks.
Absolutely.
And some stages sound horrible, and you're thank God there's in-ears.
Right.
Some stages sound great, and you're kind of like, man, I kind of want to pull these things out and enjoy. This sounds good in here, you know.
Well, I would say the monitor sounds a lot better, a wedge, but it's a source problem. So source problems are something that that's really the best thing that not having monitors eliminate is source problems.
Sure.
And so that is intelligibility, I guess, if we can go that fast, because of comb filtering and arrival times. So the reason to do inner ear is to help front a house.
Sure.
Right.
Yep.
And I would say that, being bathed in like wedges on both sides of you, a Texas headphones, I think we want to call this, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who wouldn't want that, right? You just sit there with a sub and a couple of boxes in your ears and it's just railing. It sounds great. That's fun, right?
Sure.
But that's really not the job. The job is to sell that product to your audience. And so presentation becomes a question.
Sure.
And that's where the elimination of the monitor, as many as you can, so that there's not a fight for level, then you get a lot of clarity. And I think that happened with you and Michael, with Dave, in that now we only have to take care of Dave's wedge.
Yeah.
And there's not a fight anymore.
Sure.
For hearing.
Yep.
And less complaints about hearing for even him, right?
I believe so. Yeah.
Well, it's not an issue every show anymore.
There must just be generally less competition. I guess I wonder my question is almost like even when you erase the monitors.
Yep.
And now we're just talking about the back line and the band playing together.
Yes.
Has the balance of that improved or not? Because are you really listening to that?
No,
Yeah.
I would say
it hasn't.
Well, yeah, but now you're talking about a class of player, right? So if you're talking about younger players, my general feeling is that accuracy is less of an aesthetic than it used to be, and therefore presentation is also less. It's levels. I see a lot more up. Plus or minus, I don't know how to explain it another way. 10 decibels and a channel strip that's going up and down, and an individual player that's playing keyboards or something, or guitar. They do their guitar solo and they get on 3 dB and they're sitting there in ears. They think everything's great.
Right. I guess
they're
that's
not really
question.
concerned with what's
right. Right. Like the overall actual blend has maybe taken second place in a way to the convenience of, well, my blend's good, it should be cool. I wonder about that all the time. Sometimes my bass will sound so good in my in-ears that I could be convinced like I must be way too loud. I must be way too loud on stage. And then I pull my in-ears out and I'm like, actually my amp could come up. It's barely on. I feel like it's anemic up here actually, but I don't know. I've had some conversations, and I mean, when we recently made a record with Steve Jordan, and he brought up a lot of these questions, and or not really, they're not questions for him. He's come up with his answers. Like,
What
he's
is
like,
his answer?
why would you ever wear in-ears? How can you hear anything? I got to hear the room. I got to hear the amps. If I need more guitar, I'll get a small amplifier and turn it up next to me so I can hear the guitar. You know, like for him, it was just a whole different.
Well, he's on the stage, so I guess we can say
he's on
that.
big stage. He's on, you know, arguably some of the biggest rock stages you'll be on. Not arguably.
Well, that's less of a problem because now you're in a room that's upscale and that's
where you can get away with none of that.
Then you can get away with a lot more.
Sure, that makes sense.
We last week we talked about that. So the fun places to play. I mean, aren't they the small rooms? I mean, for you guys, the players, right? Isn't it a small room that's the most fun?
Usually,
yeah, typically, yep.
Yeah, but
yep.
in that, and then everyone's in everyone's business, right?
Sure. And that's what makes it fun. Is you're right up on everybody. You can feel and hear everything.
And so you have to work it out.
Right.
I do want to say this because in answer to Cody's question, I feel like that it really depends on how you mix your ears and how you mix your monitor. And I had to learn a maturity about, like, when because I'm somebody who generally prefers a wedge, and I had to learn how differently to hear and how differently to mix that. And I learned that from Cody and Michael, because the first time that I, as like a mature musician, sat on stage with Michael's band at Bunkers, where Cody is the house sound guy, and was like, wait a second, everybody has very little in their monitors. They basically just have enough of them that they can hear, and that's about it. And I came from this school before there were in-ears, and when everybody's stage volume was loud, where you'd ask for everything in your monitor. You want, if you're the guitar player, you want keys, you want bass, you want vocals, whatever. And then when you need to hear more of something, you turn that up. And so now even amps, now you're not even talking about amps or how hard you're hitting the drums. Just in terms of wedges, your stage volume is insane.
Yes.
And that was how I came up, because a lot of musicians, they feel like I need to hear everything. Okay, well I need to hear this more, so turn it up. And sort of you're starting at a positive and then adding more. And I learned from these two guys how to start at a negative and, okay, what's the minimal I can get away with in my wedge? What are the only things that I need? And sometimes in certain rooms, especially if it's a small room, sometimes there's things I don't need at all in the wedge. I can hear it from the room.
Right.
You know, if there's a click track, I need the click track, because the timing is going to be, you know, I usually will do click track, you know, a little bit of lead mic or lead vocal, and then depending on what I'm playing, sometimes me. And that's it. And that's all I need. And the rest I've learned how to get from the stage in the room. And I feel like when someone can do it that way, I feel like that's so much better than a straight ears stage, because then I can actually hear the room. I can hear what else is going on, and we're not fighting a loudness war on stage. But I think that as you're talking about, I think that having if people don't know how to listen that way, then I think it's infinitely better than having the blast of wedges, you know, because like you said, then you get to a point where your stage volume is louder from your wedges than it is from your instruments, just because everybody's, well, I need more of this, well, I need more of this, and it just starts adding and adding and adding. And I also, again, it depends on what kind of mix you have in your ears as well, because if you're able to hear the room through your ears, through room mics and through whatever else, that's one thing. I've also been in those situations where I had ears and I took them off, and come to find out that, like, my guitar amp is on 10 and it doesn't need to be, but I couldn't tell because I was because it sounded fine in here, you know. Sure. And so I think more important than what your monitoring source is learning how to listen and learning how, And like I said, that was a conversation I had with Michael, and that was a conversation I had with Billy Franzi right after we got off that stage, because I was like, I can't hear anything up here. How can you guys do it? And Michael said, as he said to me many times, he said, you got to listen more than you play. You got to be more concerned about what your neighbor is doing, you know. And it took me some getting used to, but I'm like, wait a second, yeah, I need to know that what I'm doing is good, and I need to have something of reference, and then the rest of it I should just be able to feel. So, but again, it depends on the level of musicianship and the level of guys that you're playing with, because, you know, I definitely play out with some gigs who got guys who still have that wedge that's turned all the way up to 40, and doesn't matter how loud my amp is or how quiet my monitor is, I'm still hearing their wedge from straight across the stage.
Right.
So I just wanted to mention that, because like I said, I had that learning experience specifically from these two guys. So I'll shut up now.
No, you're on the right subject, man. I'm just trying to decide how much pepper I'm about to put on it.
Come on, Mike.
You know, I mean, you're right. It says something about a person, like the way they behave on stage has. I mean, it's almost, I can tell a person's personality by how I interact with them musically in that environment. You know, anybody who's turning up is a lot less interested in what everybody else is playing. That's a given. You know, if the singer's trying to sing and they're stepping all over them, you know, they probably interrupt people a lot when they're in conversation. Like, a lot of these things are symptomatic of the person and the personality. So if you're self-centered, of course, you're more concerned about what you're doing, how you sound, so on and so forth. You know, and these are things that we all probably have battled. I mean, we learn how to be diplomatic, and also we learn what's really important a lot later on. And that's what I'm saying, is it's the humility comes into play, you know, when you decide to do the uncomfortable thing, when you decide to do what's better for everybody than for what you think you need at that moment. Cody was just, I remember one time asking for something, and Cody was like, B, that guy is right here next to you. Why would you want him in your monitor? You want to hear him, he's right here. You know, and the other side of that truth is I could hear him a lot better if I wasn't beating the crap out of the drums too. You know, it's symbiosis. Everything is connected. And I think a lot of players it takes a while to get there. You got there, Dan. You know, that was providence. You needed to be in that environment to understand a different way to approach this thing. You know, because there's a way to do everything. That's why this series is titled Disciples of the Method, because some people don't believe in rules. They just believe in what they want, and that's all they're concerned about. This is it's everything about playing music is interactive, you know.
Yeah.
So it's your attitude about things. Really, you know, it's important that you understand what's really going on. And awareness is tantamount, or paramount rather. Like a lot of cats, like the fact that Cody had to point that out to me, that was a blind spot in my own reasoning. You know, while I'm sitting there, I'm like, you're right. This dude is right over here. Why do I want him in my monitor? Like, what safety am I trying to obtain by having all of this stuff in my monitor, and then I'm fighting to hear myself on top of it? Like, it's the answer is to be reductive.
Right.
The answer is to be reductive and be more concerned with your environment than whatever you consider to be your primary needs. Often, you know, I'm not sure what that's a reflection of necessarily, but it's always a bad sign for me when somebody's combative about turning up or turning down. Hey, listen, we're all just trying to get through the night, you know, and the audience deserves to be able to hear the best possible mix, you know. So whatever it takes, man. And don't get mad at the engineer just because you like it at a level that's going to mess up everything for everybody else, you know.
That's what I was wondering, is like, at least for myself, like, I don't know exactly when the switch flipped or if it just comes from doing it longer, but at some point as a young musician, I didn't want anyone ever telling me where I was going to set my amp. I'll set my amp where my amp's supposed to go, and you worry about your thing. And now at some point, like, I feel like I more than anyone, like, I can't wait for someone else to make the decision for me. I'm constantly at sound check going, Coco, how's my rig? Is it too loud? Is it not loud enough? Like, you tell me. Someone else tell me where to set it. And then if anyone else complains, I can go, he said that's where I should put it, man. Like, I was fine before, you know, but at some point it changes where it's like there is like this ego and this thing. And maybe it's because we come from the rock world and like, and part of that thing is sometimes what makes you a cool artist or whatever. It might be the same thing where you're like, fuck you, man, I'll turn my amp all the way up. That's how we do it or whatever. And it's like, right on, man. You know, like sometimes it's cool, but yeah, at some point it does switch, or at least it did for me. And like, I can't wait for someone else to be like, hey, you could turn up just a little bit. You should turn down. It's like, you're standing in the middle of the room in the sweet spot. You should know more than anybody. And if you're on my team, like, if you can say to me, you need to come down a little bit, I can't wait to hear that. Tell me where it should go. You know,
I got you, man.
Fireworks behind me right now.
Those are appropriate because you're saying something real, man. Yeah. The best musician I ever met, Jeff Lee Johnson. Cody probably had to ask him to turn up.
No, I liked how he played. He played at a great level all the time. And yeah, a microphone does a lot for an amplifier, you know.
Also, he liked the fatter tone. I think that he
really
liked more low end in his sound,
which is great for a guitar player too. When you get, I like a lot of bottom on the guitar.
Turner has a lot of beef coming out of Pern's rig.
Yeah,
more low end.
Look at his controls and treble off, presence off, low end all the way up, and then the mid range is where all the magic happens. But treble and presence gone, don't need it. You know what I mean? That amp is going to be plenty bright once you turn it up loud enough. Like,
his guitar
sounds great all the time.
Yes, it does. He's fairly loud too.
Fairly loud, but not abrasive. We've figured out how to make a Marshall stack like warm and like. It's funny. Michael says it all the time, and it's true. The longer you leave that amp on, the more songs you play, the angrier that thing gets, and the better it sounds. Like that amp just gets hotter the whole time, but it doesn't get upset. It gets like angry in the right ways, where it's just like, all right, we're still playing. Come on, you know. Like,
it's very its tone gets very confrontational, but not in a bad way.
Yeah, like it warms up.
I think what you guys are talking about. To me, you and I, Michael, have talked about, like, I know when I first started running sound, I could only do it one way. I didn't have more ways than one way to do it. And I was afraid that if I changed anything, I wouldn't be able to do it. So a lot of it for me was the fear of not knowing how it would be if I did something differently. And I think some of that is, Jeremy, what you're talking about. When after time passes, and you get to a comfort level with what you do, that I can say, I make the kick sound like this. Michael comes and hears it, and he says, I don't like the kick sounding like that. I like this. And I go, oh, what do you like? And oh, that's interesting. How would that be? And then I can try it, and that's fun. But when you first start, it's not fun at all.
No, and that's why, Cody, a lot of the young musicians you encountered, you bummed them out like right away.
I have.
Oh, no. Hey. You're gonna have to turn that way down. And they're defensive and young and inexperienced, you know, and they start sticking their chest out.
I regret it sometimes.
Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense though. When you are younger, you don't hear it as like, hey, we shoot for a slightly different aesthetic. We'd like to maybe tweak this and tweak that. You just hear like you did it wrong. And now, like you said, now you're out of your comfort zone. Oh shit! I thought I had it sounding awesome. I guess I don't. Now I don't know what to do. Now I'm scrambling. Now our whole transaction is about to get weird.
It brings up a lot of questions that you're not ready to answer in that moment, right?
Or it can, right?
Yeah. Maybe this is the wrong business for me. If this guy's saying I suck, then
driving
what am I
home and I
doing
take
this
the
for?
rear view mirror of my car and I face it right at myself and look at myself and I go,
Yeah,
this
it
is
can
the
all-
wrong business.
It can all fall apart. I get that, you know.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I understand. And that's, yeah, sure. I was resistant to Cody the same way, JT. He came, you know, initially talking to me about, you know, the benefits of not beating the absolute crap out of the cymbals and
Yeah, that's how
one
I
of the,
met
you know,
Cody.
and I was like, I don't want to
Yes.
hear none of that, man. Listen,
Yep.
I you know,
That's your
you
good.
got a job to do out there. My
Yep.
job is here. Now, and in my mind, the two didn't meet, you
Yep.
know, but
Yep.
it took, you know, education. It
Yep.
took being open, and it
Mhm.
also took the confidence to just try something you'd never really tried before, because playing drums is so the feeling is it will guide a lot if you let it, and it's
I
not
mean,
even necessarily how you're hearing, it's almost just what feels good in the body.
100%.
Almost whatever feels good is
100%.
is a problem to someone else.
It can
You know, when
override.
you're
It can override all your better judgment. I've told Michael this story privately several times, probably, but I'm happy to tell it here. When I met Cody, I was playing drums for this girl named Kat Perkins, a local girl from here, great singer. She placed very highly on that show, The Voice. I forget, third place or something.
Yep.
Whatever. And I kind of caught the next couple years for her were fantastic, and I kind of got lucky enough to hop into that band, and I was playing drums in that band. And it was the first band I had played. I had played drums in the past in a lot of bands, hadn't played drums in years. Now I'm in a band. Now we're on in-ears. I've never played drums with in-ears before, and going back to kind of connecting some of the dots of hearing and feeling. One of the first things Cody said to me was like, "You're playing your cymbals way too loud," you know. I don't know exactly how he put it, but that's basically what he said. And I basically was like, "Turn the other shit up, man." You know, like that's how I play. And it's interesting when you have those in-ears in and you get that blend the way you want it. What do you do as a drummer? You crank up the kick drum, get it huge, get it attacky. You crank up the snare drum. Don't really put much or any cymbals in there. And you reinforced all the drums to sound great. And now you just hear the cymbals back through the in-ears, which don't have cymbal mics on, and you beat the hell out of them. And it feels awesome because you're hearing it correctly. Super loud drums, not a lot of cymbals. Everyone else is hearing, you know, but
You're the
you
vocal
don't
mic.
hear that. It sounds awesome in your ears. I got the guitars cranked up. I got the vocal just loud enough to know where it's at. I don't realize how loud the cymbals are on that mic because it's just peeking out above all the rest of the shit or whatever. But yeah, I was in a perfect storm of like, we're in this band, we're playing this loud rock, and my favorite drummers are guys like Grohl and Taylor Hawkins, who are playing stadiums, and they can swing for the fences because, like you said, in a big enough space, go ahead, play your cymbals as hard as you want. It doesn't. The wind blows them away out here, so it doesn't matter anymore. But
Right, you're
yeah,
30 yards from the lead.
I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it from Cody. My mix sounded cool, and it felt good to play a certain way. And now I can go back years later and watch YouTube clips, and it's like, fuck, all cymbals. Cody was right, you know, like, and I probably knew he was right then, but I didn't really want to hear it because it feels good to play the way you want to play. And sometimes you forget that is certainly when you're playing. I'm playing drums in Kat Perkins. It's not like a band. It's her. She's a pop star. She's a singer. That's who the people paid to see. They didn't pay to hear my new 20-inch crash cymbal and see how loud it could go. Like that's the last thing on anyone's mind, you know. But you know, when you're young and that's the thing or whatever, like I think you let a lot of that stuff override your judgment. You start listening maybe later, or maybe I started listening later and playing sooner than, you know, I don't know, like you pay attention to those details later as you start to realize that there are things that are more important than just the joy of playing. Like sometimes your joy of playing might be taking away literally everyone else's overall level of possible joy.
That's right.
If you were to take a step back, the whole situation could elevate. But until you allow that in, you're just a little selfish about it because you don't know any better. You know?
Yeah, the goal is to play together.
Right.
Yeah, if you're playing for personal glory,
right, I
Why
record
don't
a
you
lot of young
golf instead?
bands.
You
I
know,
record a lot of young bands, and I often say it, and it's like the tough big brother love of being like, we need to play together. You guys are all playing at the same time.
Mhm.
You're all playing the same song, and we're all hitting the same strokes, more or less. But we're not really listening to each other. We're just counting off and going. And we're all like kind of tunnel vision. We're all headed the same direction, but no one's looking around to like see if the other guy's keeping up or not. It's like it's not a race. We can, we can play together, and that's. I mean, I suppose that's when it all starts sounding better at that point.
Well, Matt, that is the aesthetic I was talking about that seems to be somewhat fading away. It's like having everything happen at literally the same time, like, which is what you're talking about. And then the intention of where it's supposed to be, because, you can have tension on the top or on the top side or the back side of the downbeat, right, Michael? And how you do that influences the song.
yes.
Which is the point of why we're all there, to have people hear these songs, right? So, yeah, listening seems like a really important thing, and I feel like it's a hard thing to get to, and getting to be harder in a weird way.
Sure.
Yeah, because you can't make people. Well, we're back to one other nugget from the other. I'll say two things from the other broadcast from a week ago.
Excuse me.
I should have known something when I was going on tour with Prince, breaking cymbals at Wembley Arena, and then coming home and doing the same thing at bunkers. Like conventional wisdom should have informed me that you have no sense of proportion. I don't know, and it probably was some sort of stubborn impulse, some sort of I'm sticking to my guns, and I don't want to say that it was necessarily testosterone fueled or like some extension of male toxicity to just not back down, but because a woman can back down just as can choose to not back down just the same as a man,
Yes.
and all variations in between. People make that choice. It's either in their character to back down or not. So I'm not going to say it was like necessarily a male trait, but I know that there had to be some stubbornness in me about it, predicated on the fact that I got real opportunities in the music business pretty quick in life. I mean, I was playing for Prince. I joined his band when I was 19. So, my brain wasn't even fully formed yet, according to science.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. So Cody's not arguing, but he's trying to enlighten like a 22-year-old, who's in a band with videos on MTV at that very time. You couldn't tell me nothing. I wasn't hearing Cody.
You would say that's my stroke.
Yeah, that's my stroke, Cody. Come on now. What, the PA can't keep up? Maybe something's wrong with the PA. I don't know.
Well, then we did.
That's the kind of stuff I was on. Right. We'll turn everything else up, man.
You're doing something wrong out there, maybe.
Right.
Meanwhile, Cody is he was mixing he had been mixing at the bunker way before I got there. So for me not to lean to his understanding of what's good and bad in that room, which I was just being a bonehead, man. Yep. He conventional wisdom should have told me a lot of these things. So I'm not.
Well, you weren't alone. You weren't alone in the volume thing back.
Yeah,
then.
I was in a band that the arms race was on all the time.
Full time.
It was always an arms race.
Yeah.
And the day I realized that if I play quieter, they won't have to turn up so much, I began to weaken because I started to feel, I felt responsible. And that's the thing, is that's what began to separate me from my peers, is that I felt a responsibility to play in a way that made things better for everybody. And once I began to understand that as an extension of my generosity as a person, as a human, I got behind it much more, and I think that has been my main goal as a musician, is to always make space for everybody. That's my driving mental state, is it working? Are we working together? And if I'm stopping that from happening, I need to change something, you know. And I think that it's I don't know if it's necessarily a reflection of maturity or a spiritual awakening or just, you know, common sense, you know, but it took me a minute. And, you know, I'm glad that I finally arrived, you know, because every gig's not going to be at Wembley Arena, you know.
No. Well, and if you can, I feel like isn't it true that if you can play with control, you can also play at Wembley Arena with control.
Yes, the object is, well, I want to say two things: that most of our growth comes from uncomfortability. Like you got to really, and I feel Audrey on what she's saying about, you know, like I wouldn't work with such and such and this person and that person, but you know, as I don't mean to go all the way with it, but it's like sometimes when I have those conflicts, for me, because I am a Christian person, I got to get over myself and, you know, my assertions about what's right and wrong in life sometimes, and focus on the goal at hand and just do business. I can't control who's coming at me to try to hire me. I can say yes or no, but sometimes when I've said yes to a situation where I thought I should have said no, things happen. Sometimes you know, your interaction with a person can change them. You know, so I don't often, I make the joke that I play at a Klan rally. If the money was right, I don't care. You know, you
kick the shit out of them. Yeah.
Exactly. Hey,
If you take their money, then they have less money to do Klan stuff with.
it'll be the best Klan rally you ever had as far as the music goes. I give you my all, Klansman. You know, I don't know what made you, you know, decide to hate. That's not really my business. But what I can tell you is that when I start playing these drums, you're not gonna hate nothing.
That's right.
You're gonna feel warmth and the universe.
Some magic drums, love it.
Yeah, and good vibrations, not low ones, high ones. So I think it's, you know, I'm not even aiming this at you, Audrey. So don't feel like I'm attacking you, because I get it. You know who you are and you know how you want to move through this world, you know. But for me, I always choose. I more often than not choose to engage, because I know that communication is essential and key to our learning and our growth while we're on this planet. And for me to just let a hateful person, you know, for me to leave money on the table because a hateful person, you know, might be pulling it out of their wallet, I can't justify that spiritually for myself. I was like, okay, well, no, let's dance, man. Let's see what this is really about, you know, because I'm not afraid of that. You know, there's people in my life posing as friends who can't stand me. So, you know, dealing with somebody who's open about their feelings,
posing as friends.
I'm not worried about what I know about people. I'm more worried about what I don't.
Yeah.
So, you know, if I can have a professional experience with anybody, I'll take it. You know, because otherwise, I think I would feel like I was being a hypocrite. And you know, I really don't believe there's accidents in life. And so, you know, I realize that I'm not. I don't. You know, I don't vibrate like everybody. But that's kind of you know where I'm at in my life now, is that it's, you know, I have a responsibility to not just I mean, along with along with the glory of the job, there's also very basic tenets, you know, and I guess, yeah, I'm trying to figure out what how I'm really trying to say it, or what I'm really trying to say, but just that judging people is dangerous, I guess. That's all. And that's what it is Cody. Cody at some point said, B, I'm your best friend out there, man. Believe me, like, your drums sound incredible. I mean, I wish you could be out here and hear what I'm doing for you, because, you know, you'd have a whole different attitude about this thing if you could just understand what's really going on. And he began to teach me about like gain to noise ratio, noise floor, all of these terms, and redundancy, and just how to listen in a better way, and how to be concerned more about the large picture. And it's I guess it's easier said than done, because it surely took me years to capitulate. But I'm glad I finally got there, because now I can play in any room. I can play the Dakota where the tables and chairs are like right against the stage, and have a successful night where nobody complained about the drumming being too loud. So with the flexibility came versatility, and I want all the money. I'm in business to be in business.
Well, yes,
I don't want people running for me. Why don't we hire Michael Bland? No, dude, are you kidding? When he hits the snare drum, it sounds like a cannon getting shot. I don't need that on my stage. Like, I needed to get past the stigma, past my own stigma, even though, it caused the drumming community to start, grumbling like, oh man, it's over. He doesn't sound like he used to at all. Oh, this is crazy. Oh man, cancel Christmas. He's gone. They didn't understand, my journey. And only Cody and I understood the journey. And
it was hard with the band, yeah.
Our crowning achievement was getting that band to play, at probably 90 decibels.
Oh no,
Nice.
we're 106, but
Okay. Okay. Well, be honest, Cody, but that's 106 after being at 186.
But that's me at 106. So
Yeah,
then,
okay.
I mix within 10 decibels. That makes the state, off the deck, you're at 96 dB then, right? So,
okay.
Because there's math involved with it. That's one of the things is you have to fit. If the snare drum is 100 decibels and I need to be able to, I need a window of, let's say, 10 decibels to mix in, right? Then it's going to be 110.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I got you. Still learning, Audrey. Don't judge me.
No judgment at all.
So
learning
that's
is good.
the deal.
I don't know if I like Dan trying to direct this conversation like the Wizard of Oz and whatnot, just like throwing up these. It's nice that people are making comments. I don't need to see them all, Dan.
The Wizard of Oz.
This conversation is a separate organism. But I'll answer this question. Learning how to listen. I don't know if it's a matter of learning. What it really is caring. Mm-hmm. Do you care what other people are playing around you? You have to be concerned first, and not only that. Cody and I, we touched upon a particular player last week who asked Cody about like, how do I get my levels set better? We talked about the phenomenon of guitar players whose clean signal is way louder than their dirty signal, and they don't seem to understand that just because it's dirty all of a sudden doesn't mean it's
louder.
It's louder. And I don't know what that blind spot is. And I was actually saying I needed JT to help me understand this. Why does that happen, JT?
Well, I think there's a couple different reasons. Back in the day, before we had amps with a lot of options and a lot of pedals, you had an amp that was kind of out of volume, and if you put a distortion box or an overdrive box into it, it would just hit the front end of the amp harder, which would make it a little louder and make it a little more distorted and turn it up. But now we have channel switching amplifiers. We have several different types of distortion pedals, and I think it started with the channel switching amplifier, because people were like, oh, cool, now I actually can set how loud my clean is versus my distortion, and it's not just a pedal that just turns it up, it's separate. And for whatever reason, there's just some weird blind spot where often that clean channel is super loud, and then they kick in the button and it just goes to this little tiny fizzy little bumblebee sound, and it's just like,
adorable.
What is that? Like, that is like
adorable.
The most, that makes you automatically like the most amateurish sounding band when that happens. Like, so it's, whether it's just setting up the 2 channels on your amp wrong, or having too many pedals in front of you with too many options. That, I mean, every one of those distortion pedals has a volume knob on it. Most of them have a distortion, a tone, and a volume. And I think what most mistakes are, where they start from, is people go, okay, cool, I want a bunch of distortion, so I crank that way up and I turn the volume all the way down and figure out how loud I want the distortion, and then I just kind of slowly roll up the volume. And they're not setting that correctly, versus maybe crank the volume on that pedal all the way up and then just slowly crack into the distortion knob. So instead of making the pedal do all this fizzy work, just make your amp work a little harder on the way in, and it will it might be eye-opening how it just naturally gets a little louder and a little more distorted and a little more angry and a little more bloom, and you're just pushing the front end versus telling this little box, all right, make it super distorted and fizzy, and then I'll decide how loud it's going to be. It's like it's like basically if Cody wants a little more something to happen, he just push up the fader. It's like there's a way to make your distortion box basically just turn up your guitar, not entirely reshape everything, and then decide how much of that volume to give it, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Can I go ahead? I'm sorry.
No. Go, Dan.
Can I ask a question to the 3 engineers here on the stream as a guitar player? So when I'm doing a gig, let's say I'm doing a cover band, so I've got to have every tone imaginable, which includes a clean, like a bluesy overdrive, and like a heavy distortion. And let's assume we're playing a big enough room, and that my stage volume is not like in like what the audience hears is determined solely based on your mix and not at all based on my stage volume.
Right.
Do you want, when I hit the distortion, do you want it to remain the same level as the clean? And then you have control over whether or not to boost it because I'm playing a solo versus keep it low if I'm playing like a distorted line that sits under the vocals? Or do you want it to automatically be louder when I hit the distortion and you'll bring it down in the house if necessary?
I'll go first. I mean, ultimately, we want it to be perfect. We want it to go up if it's supposed to go up and sit there if it's supposed to sit there. And we don't want to have to touch that fader. So we want you as the guitarist, or me as the guitarist, to get as close as possible, I guess. And then hopefully if you have a good relationship, that's when you get to that point where it's like, hey, man, whatever you're hitting in the bridge, I'm losing it a little bit. Or you could bring that patch up. Or you have one patch that's wildly out front of the other ones, and we need to tone that back. But I don't think the goal is to shoot for. I mean, of course you want things to be consistent, but I don't think that's the ultimate goal. Mm-hmm. If the sound is supposed to be a little louder and a little brighter, then I would make it that way, and I would start with what I think is right and wait until someone says that part's wrong. Like I don't think I would shoot for like, yeah, everything is I looked at all my patches in Pro Tools and they're dead even. No one cares. That's not necessarily musical.
Yeah.
I feel like you're playing right into my hand. I actually really care about that. I like program to be program. So if it's 3 or 4 decibels, if Jeremy, you're talking about 3 or 4 decibels, that's great. But if I'm chasing stuff around all night, then you feel this keyboard part should be here and it disappears. If I'm mixing within 10 decibels, I don't have 3 or 4 or 2 decibels to waste. So if levels are moving around, then what an engineer will typically do is try to use a compressor, which really is not what a compressor is for, but you try to use a compressor to try to stabilize the channel so it moves around less. And in that case, then you're using higher ratios of compression, and it's going to affect the overall sound of the instrument. So my goal with almost everyone is I know when you're going to solo. I can hear them coming a mile away. They're going to be +5. So you're going to be sitting at 0, and I'm going to bump your fader up to +5 right when your solo starts. And right when it ends, I'm going to come back. Vocals are going to come back 7 decibels above the bed. And that's where I want to be. And I run a really strict program that way. So I like it to be sure. There's 2-3 decibels, but if it's swinging more than 5 decibels one way or the other, it's really you run too much defense and very little time do you spend in offense, in my opinion.
That makes sense. Sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both of you. Yeah, I definitely don't want to be chasing things around, and especially if it's a band that I don't work with regularly. Like most, I don't tour with people, and it's rare when I get a bunch of rehearsals and stuff. So most of the bands I work with in a live situation are kind of one-offs, and so I don't want to be chasing things around and trying to, whoa, someone got super loud. Okay, it's that person, and now I fix it. I don't want that to happen. And at the same time, I don't know their music as well. So if someone, I can tell what solo is coming up, but maybe their solo order, I don't know who's going first, or maybe they don't even know until they look and they're like, oh, you go. Okay. And then they figure it out. So with that in mind, I do like a little bit, a few dBs added when a solo is coming. If a pedal is doing that, that's great. It makes less work for me. And I don't have to try to guess like what sound they're going for. And, hopefully I've had a conversation with the band about it and have an idea ahead of time of what's going on. But I think it's just chasing things in different ways. I don't want to chase things to make them louder because someone's soloing and, oh crap, their pedal just knocked a bunch of volume off and now they're supposed to be the focal point and I need to pull them up like a whole bunch. And I don't want to do the opposite of like trying to like duck them back down because they got too loud all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the answer is all of the above.
Yeah. I guess so.
And
within a range,
There's different styles of mixing. Jeremy.
Oh
no.
It's a circle.
There's a bird. He's spinning a little one.
I don't know how it is in Minneapolis. Right here in Wisconsin, we're getting a lot of severe weather.
It's been blowing around out here, and it's been
raining. We've had a few tornado watches or tornado warnings of the like come in, and so that may be where we lost Jeremy, but he's back though.
He's back. Way to get back on.
I don't know what happened there. Everything got weird.
What is your where do you park? Are you a zero? You said at zero, Audrey?
I like to. Yeah, it's different. So I'm mostly studio. I do 30% live. So when I am doing live, I like to set my gain so that my faders are at 0. So that way in a panicked moment, this person has come on stage. Surprisingly, I just know that needs to snap right there. And then I can adjust, based on how their performance is going. But that just, the less I have to think in the live scenario, the better. Like in the studio, I'll sit here and I think I need to move that mic over a few inches. That's really going to get the tone just right. It's going to be great. But in the live, you can't do that. You just gotta run with it. So the less thinking I have to do, the better.
I think everybody here has live and studio experience pretty thoroughly, right? Either as a musician or an engineer or both. Less
time in studio than anybody here. I do. I don't enjoy it that much. I like to hit ball. I talk about it like hitting balls. Like if you're a practice, you have to go to a practice hitting balls. Like there's a machine throwing balls at you and you hit them. I like live because I don't hit them all, but I hit a lot of them, and it's fun to swing the bat. So that's kind of how I look at it. In studio, you rehash. We could get a better solo. I think we should take it again, right? I mean, that kind of thing for me. I just. It's hard for me to stay with it, Go home. Yeah. I don't care if you get the solo right. I want to leave. Okay.
Sometimes you got to cut them off too. I don't know. Classical people. I mean, they're not really going to solo, but like they're very particular about it has to be just right. And I've edited 30-second notes for people, just to make sure everything is exactly right. And we do 30 takes of a 4-measure chunk so that it is right, and it can be tedious. That is very true.
I'll poke my eyes out.
I'll say that my studio experience informs my live approach and vice versa. I am always aiming to play balanced, and for the sake of the for sake of the larger picture. And also I don't like to make mistakes, so I like to be sure about what I'm doing. And I have to get clear in my mind first, about what is really the task. And so I guess for me, those two worlds, I mean, I'm glad that I got so much time doing both. With Prince, we rehearse all day, and then a lot of times we'd be recording all night. So you get into this mode where, you're listening for the same reason. You're fighting for the same things. So, I don't enjoy one more than the other, really. It can all be a joy.
I think in response to the whole thing about multiple takes, and Michael, you can, and Jeremy, I guess, and really everybody, you can correct me if you disagree, but one of the first actual experienced artists that I worked for in the studio, not like somebody that wasn't, not like a local artist that didn't really know what they were doing, but in terms of somebody that had full experience, they wouldn't let me do more than a couple takes. They would, whatever the first take was that they could live with, even if I couldn't, we had to move on. And so when I'm recording myself, because like a lot of people now, when I'm doing studio work, a lot of it I'm my own engineer, and I try very hard to stick with the first take that doesn't make me cringe, because otherwise you end up chasing the dragon, or you end up just seeking a level of perfection that, okay, fine, maybe you will get it more precise, but now it doesn't have the same energy that it did, or it doesn't feel the same, or there's a reason why a lot of the people that aren't the one playing tend to like first and second takes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the first recording sessions I did, well, yes, I guess, where Billy Franzi was there. And it was for Ricky Peterson, and it was in Studio A at Paisley Park. And and Billy Franzi's guitar just kind of sat for the first hour. And he was out in, maybe having a cup of coffee or something. He might have been outside smoking.
Having a Heineken, yeah.
I learned that Ricky had this policy working when he worked with Billy Franzi. He wouldn't let him touch the guitar until it was time to actually record.
Mm.
Because I think Billy, some people get a kind of paralysis in the studio.
Billy did, yeah.
And Ricky worked with him enough to know that. I didn't know that. I had only mainly worked with Billy on stage. So I didn't know he had this kind of peculiar sort of, glitch that he got very self-conscious in the studio. And so Ricky Peterson's answer was, listen, I think they called him Francois. Francois, don't touch that guitar until it's time for you to actually play. Because all the good notes are going to go right out the window, So he wouldn't let him touch the guitar until it was time to play. And even then, they only gave Ricky only gave Billy Franzi a couple of passes, really. They really wouldn't, And Prince Prince claimed that I was worse than he was. Because if there was anything I wanted to, he would argue with me if we could just do it one more time. Why? What was wrong with that? It's like, you're worse than I am. You're done, sir. I'll call you. When I'm ready for you to come back in. Yeah, so I guess that's when I realized that I really was a perfectionist and not just imagining that. Because Prince was a perfectionist, and for him to say, I mean, surely he was just, even if I made a mistake, he's like, that's cool, I'll make something out of it. Right.
Let's move on. Right.
Yeah, he really wanted to catch the lightning. He wasn't, you weren't playing for your own gratification. You were playing for his gratification. Yep. So you better, have your arsenal together and be, in a mindset where, because whatever mistakes you make, you might have to live with them.
It's interesting that you say that. I think that is very true. I think that young engineers, or at least I had this misconception making records, okay, the more records I make and kind of the bigger the records get or whatever, the more time we'll have for everything. And like, you know, you hear about these records that take forever, and it's like, oh, they spend a week getting the snare drum sound or whatever. And then you get to these sessions and you realize the bigger the session or the higher profile people or caliber you're working with, the faster they move. Because everyone's ready to go, and let's get a sound, man. I'm ready to play. Are you ready to play? Yeah, I'm ready to play too. I'm putting my coffee down, and headphones are fine. Let's go.
That's
and
right.
It's not like, well, hang on, can I hear the rack tom again for a little bit? It's kind of like,
no.
You better have a sound that's pretty good. So same thing as an engineer. Like, you might have to live with the fact that something was a little messed up because it was time to roll one, and someone looked up and said, hey, roll tape on this, and that was it. That was the one, you know. So
yeah.
you know,
I asked Susan Rogers, who used to engineer for Prince. I said, the one thing I never got to ask him was, how come the vocal is the vocal is distorted on Little Red Corvette? Like, who did that? She was like, it wasn't me. That might have been, you know, and she named a couple of names of some other people. Like,
sure.
You know, but I'm sure Prince was like, that's cool. You know,
Absolutely. I know Evan has a story specifically at my friend Evan Baki, who engineered for Prince for a while. He went out and Prince was like, get a vocal sound. I think he told him, you know, use that preamp and this compressor, and I want this microphone on the boom, and get me a sound quick. And so Evan got a quick sound, and he sat down and put the headphones on, and he checked the mic or whatever, and Evan saw the needle slam. So he went to like kind of dive for the compressor, like, oh, that's a little hot. No, that sounds perfect. I'll take it from here. He liked what he heard. Like, don't touch that now. I don't care if the needle's ticking off the back of the meter.
That's
it sounds
exactly
cool.
right.
I'm gonna cut this vocal. You go back in the lounge, and I'll let you know when I need you again. But it was that thing of being like, oh, that's wrong. Let me grab it. And he was already could identify. That sounds cool to me. Whatever it's doing right now, that's what I want to get. It's time to roll. You know, and it's same thing. It's like, well, hopefully it's cool. You know, like maybe it's cool, maybe it's not. It's baked in now. But as long as he says it's cool, it's cool.
Yeah. And then that was a I do remember him saying the reason he got the Dimidio board that lived in Studio B was because he had used one at Sunset, and you could just keep turning up the bass and it would never distort. He said it'd just get warmer and fatter. And somebody else had told me that there was a board like that, I think in Cincinnati, where Roger and Zapp used to record, and Roger used to put gaff tape over the bass meters because he thought that sometimes those meters were lying. Like, I don't care what bass.
Blocking out the check engine light.
I know what I hear.
If I don't see it, it's fine.
So I think Prince had some of that where he's like, I'll trust my own ears before I trust what any of these needles say.
Sure, a lot of those consoles, the meters would give up well before the good sound would give up. Some of those,
and there you have it.
Push really hard into them, and some of those transformers and some of that soaking up that happens is actually really musical and nice in a recording setting, you know. So
so I think he was always willing to take the risk, you know, and sometimes it worked in his favor and other times it didn't. But it's the thing, it's having the sense of adventure and also the sense of what's important, which is that the moment is captured.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Because in many ways,
ready to go, or the sound is inspiring, or whatever it is,
right.
to be able to say,
I feel it now. So now is when it's supposed to happen.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, his muse really dictated a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It's in a circular way. When talk about like better ways to listen or knowing when to listen. That's an interesting example of knowing that what was most important wasn't necessarily the needle jumping or the wrong sound. The part to listen to was the part that the music was about to get made right now.
Yeah.
So the other stuff didn't matter. You know what I mean?
Or it wasn't as important.
Right,
I mean,
right.
and everybody here knows how big a hit Little Red Corvette was.
Right.
So ultimately, he had the last laugh on that.
Yeah, who made that vocal so crunchy? Who cares? Have you heard that song? Right.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Now, Cody, I have heard that when Prince would sit in at bunkers, that his guitar was always on 11. Is that true?
No,
Uh-uh.
not
He
Prince.
wasn't,
Yeah, he didn't play really loud.
he
Guitar wise,
wasn't
he
like
was.
that.
Mm-mm. That's Jelly Bean.
Well, I've heard that too.
Oh,
I've heard that
you
too.
names now? I thought we were gonna keep that.
Sorry.
In
Just a
fairness,
holiday,
that's not a secret. That is not a secret. Everybody knows that.
All right.
Yeah, but we're not trying to single nobody out necessarily. We're trying
Yeah.
to inspire. We're trying to
Jelly
inspire
Bean doesn't
people
play
to do
loud
better.
anymore.
That's all.
He doesn't play loud anymore, Michael. Have you had Jelly Bean sit in with you lately?
No,
He's
you
not.
said he doesn't play as loud.
Nope.
I wonder what happened.
Don't know.
All
He's-
right,
Not at all. I don't know.
maybe he had a moment. Maybe he had an epiphany. God bless
Probably.
him if he did.
God
Yeah,
bless him anyway. Yeah.
and that's yes. I'll say that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there is. I mean, you're never too old to learn. If your heart is if your heart and mind are open, there's always something to learn.
Well, he's a drummer, right?
Yeah, and he's a good guitar player.
Yeah, he's a good guitar.
I remember Prince had come down and Jelly sat in with us, and next day at rehearsal, I don't think Prince knew that Jelly Bean really played guitar, and he said Jelly can play a little bit, huh? You know, and that's high praise coming from Prince to even admit that he liked something somebody else was
Right.
doing. You know,
To play a little bit means like, hey, wait a minute.
like, oh, you're saying something.
How good
Yeah,
are
but,
you?
you know,
You're not
I'm
better than me,
interested
are
in
you?
what you have to say. Yeah, you can play a little bit. He was saying some things.
Yeah.
Jesse's
Yeah.
loud.
Well, he could hear him. He was loud enough for him to hear.
Jesse's loud. Are we talking? I don't know. I'm getting in trouble, right? I shouldn't be doing this.
No, I'm about to rescue you anyway, Cody, because it's almost time for us to adjourn.
Yep.
So we should be having the lightning round for this Algonquin.
Absolutely. Is there anything else? Audrey, I don't know if we're getting you again next week, so is there anything else you want to speak on while you're here?
You're not getting me again next week. But one of the things that kept kind of coming to mind throughout this conversation is just the concept of doing overdubs versus playing live together, because so many people do everything so separate now, and you just can't. You can respond to what came before you, but they're not going to respond to you when you're doing your overdub after the fact. And so when we're talking about like interaction and like leaving space for somebody else, like that's just harder in an overdub environment. It doesn't really work the same way as if we're having a band together, they're all playing, like can see each other, they can interact that way. It's just that just kept coming up to mind over the course of the conversation. I thought that was
I will say this, and again, we've got several other much more accomplished session musicians than me here that can speak on that as well. I mean, I mainly play two instruments, organ and guitar, and my approach to organ is a little different. The organ part, for the most part, is going to be the organ part based on what I hear. But when it comes to guitar, if you send me a session, I mean, first of all, I'll always ask, could you please give me everything that you have? Like, I don't care if the piano part's not finished. Don't wait to send it because it's not finished. Give me everything you have. But then also, I will oftentimes send 10 guitars. And depending on what happens after me, you might use 2 of them, or you might use all 10, or you might use something in between, or you might mix them accordingly. But I always err on the side of sending more, and sending more that can be split up, separate tracks and separate guitars, so that you don't necessarily have to use them all or use them all the same way. And so that's my response to that. At least as an organist.
Oh, Dan.
As an organist, I you're not layering organs the way you're layering guitars, you know. But for at least for guitar, that's my solution to that. And I really do like doing sessions that way, because I can try a bunch of things, and you can use what you want to use and not use what you don't want to use, and I can send you, like I said, I can send you 10 files, and then based on what happens after me, you know, affects how you use them. But I don't mind that. Now, when it comes to live, obviously that's a different story. But I think that comes back to the whole conversation about listening, because again, Michael is the one that taught me live. You know, I don't need to be hearing everything that's going on. I need to be more interested in what my neighbor is doing. And then even if that's not blasting at me, I still know what to leave space for.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
I know. I
And
mean, go ahead, Mike.
no, go ahead, man. Because I was.
Well, I was going to say, you can speak to it even more so as a drummer. As a guy, I've been hired to play drums on a decent amount of isolated recording sessions like this, and as a drummer, I can tell you, it can be an absolute nightmare because you will get often delivered to you a track that's maybe one scratch guitar and a scratch vocal to a click that may not even necessarily be playing all that together with the click, but close enough. And then it's like, yeah, man, just give me this Beatlesy thing and blah, blah, blah. And it's like they rattle off all these terms and you have nothing to bounce off of, no other musical ideas to play off of. You have a raggedy scratch track and like some cliff notes. And sometimes you get to underdub, as I like to call it, where you get a full song and it's like, oh, awesome. I can sneak right under this and no problem. But often you get left as a drummer as the first guy to go. Or girl, it can be a disaster where it's like, yeah, and it's always, it seems often like it's like, make it real Ringo-y. And it's like, what? I don't even know what this song is. It's like a wispy little vocal and like the tiniest acoustic. And you're like, well, it's gonna have pedal steel and Hammond organ and this guy and this girl and this thing. And it's like, well, that would be cool to hear, so I could maybe like play some music along with that,
Yeah, no, they really.
As a bass player, I like to go as late as possible. I would love to be, even as the bass player, I'd love to be the last guy to overdub after the lead vocals there. So
everybody wants to be the last guy.
Yeah, everyone wants. Yeah, I suppose
McCartney was that guy. Yeah. Paul McCartney was that dude. He would push everybody else through everything else, and then he would sit back and take a whole track for bass, just bass guitar.
Yeah,
you got drums and piano on the same channels.
Four available.
All this bouncing going on, and then McCartney just greedy.
25%.
Yeah. But I was going to say, maybe we can address this one question that happened to catch my attention, and Dan probably saw it and was gonna, but I made him gun shy. So this right here, somebody asking about, it's hard to learn anyway when you don't yet know what good sounds like. Now, I think that's valid because, a lot of things in life you have to be shown, and also the word good is, it's relative, but, sometimes actually, we don't have, who we're missing? We're missing Colin from this conversation.
We could probably
because we're talking about a guy who's done a lot of studio work, and Soul Asylum has been his main experience live as a sound person. I think that Colin's still learning about us, and we're still learning about him to a certain degree. And I think that while his aesthetic, I've never heard one complaint about his mix out front ever from anybody. I know he knows what he's doing, but I think sometimes you have to understand there's different ways to mix for different results, obviously. And what works live to translate what's going on is not necessarily the same thing that would work in the studio. And I think that while a lot of what we probably listen for, you and me, JT, and we've talked about this before, we're listening for clarity, not so much character.
Yeah.
We're listening for
live clarity overrules everything. In the studio, all you're looking for is character.
Yeah.
All day long, you're trying to find.
We want to hear
get more character out of every little bit of it, right?
Yeah.
But live, I want to figure out, and this goes back to, being not only being able to listen, but now being able to hear.
Yes.
And the difference of how you can play when you are indeed hearing things, I guess, to your preference or whatever. For me as a bass player, there's a certain amount of kick drum that I want to hear and a certain amount of point that I want to hear on it. So I know exactly where it is. So I stand a chance of being able to be slightly in front of or behind or right with you,
Mhm.
versus just getting a low end signal with maybe not a lot of certain point to it, and having a wide lane of room for error as to exactly where that note is.
Sure,
Uh,
absolutely. I think
there's a fine line between aesthetic and pure economy of what you need to get down the road, I guess.
yeah, and Cody, are you? I see you shaking your head. Does that mean you agree with what's being said? Like,
I like
and
what
let
he
me
said.
ask you: Do you mix? Do you mix for economy? Does that play a part?
Well,
Or is
economy
it
and
just physics for you? It's just all
no, it's not all physics for me. What I'm trying to do is represent what's being played as accurately as possible, and sometimes that even means there's some things that are abhorrent, I guess is the word, right? So a singer gets in their throat and they rip your head off, right? I can make the decision, okay, that's not going to happen to me again. So I'm going to grab those frequencies. I'm going to pull those down, or I'm going to take a multi-band compressor and I'm going to compress that away, right? So then that's gone forever.
Right.
So then it starts getting muddier and mulchier and more processed sounding. So I'll go with, I want to do what you did. I want to represent. I want people to hear what you played, and
Okay. Mhm.
and so it's more like that. Does that address what you're saying?
I guess kind of, sort of. I guess I'm just. What I'm asking is, how much do you mix for aesthetic? Like, I know once I took the reverb away from you, you learned to live with it, and then you liked it.
Well, yeah,
You know.
I know. I don't know. Me as a live guy, I know what I want to do right away.
Okay.
And but that doesn't necessarily have to work with a band. So I have to listen and make sure that I'm right.
Okay. I guess more importantly, so I get refocused on the question, how did you decide what is a good? Does the singer play into it? Like, as far as if you want a good vocal sound,
Mm-hmm.
you have a concept of that before they get on the mic.
Oh, so I also do that somewhat differently than a lot of people do. I'll do this on our upcoming show. I take the star mic front of house and I listen to my voice on the star mic front of house. If my voice sounds like my voice, their voice sounds like their voice. I don't like, there are things because people have certain characters and qualities in their voice. And so then you may need to deviate from that. But I guess economy is what I do. I try to do the very least possible.
Now we're getting there. Yes, that's what I kind of meant. Like,
Yes,
is that
more is more.
yes, and you don't do this thing that a lot of other people do, where they go, "Oh, that's trouble. I'm gonna just take all of that out of there." Good.
I
I know for a fact that Cody tries not to lose. Yours is a fight to keep as much music as possible in your mix, so you're not reductive. You don't take out frequencies unless you absolutely have to.
I've always said that in live, what I like to do is play with it's game before feedback. That's the game, right? Well, can we agree about three engineering people? Yes, right?
Yep.
It's game before feedback. So that's the game you're playing. I can turn up your microphone this loud before it feeds back at this frequency. When it feeds back at that frequency, my choice is to take that frequency away. I can take it away a number of places. What I try to do is I try to be as close to that edge as I can with everything, because I feel like then I am taking away from the sine wave or the sound of the sound system, the good part of the sound of the sound system, the least possible. So I try to do the least I can. And frequency, level, everything. That's why I like the band, and not to push it off, but I like the band to give me program so that I can make choices. And so that I'm not chasing a channel, a keyboard level or a guitar level, or, oh, now the snare drum's this loud. That's weird. About a bar ago, it was half that level. Now it's here. So and then you're chasing all that. Well, then you can't be very creative when that happens. And so I like to have things be very stable for me. Everyone else is different, but that's what I like.
Yeah. Okay.
I like that you use your voice to calibrate. Like, I feel like that's, you know what you're supposed to sound like. So then, yeah, it carries over. Smart.
Yep. When I sound like me, then I know because I can't figure it out with somebody else's voice because I don't know it.
Mhm.
But I know mine.
Yeah, okay. And with the yeah, just another thing. I know that some people have described your mixing style as hi-fi. Like you really, like there's a definite shape. There's clarity is the goal. I can always, I can vouch for that of what I've heard of your mixing out front, that there is a clarity that you're after.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think many of your your peers in town, they I don't know if it's that they don't understand what it is you do, or they just have a different, sense of, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, some people are.
Everybody's got their thing, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm saying now because
I locked up, so I can't see your guys' expressions.
That's all right.
I'm going to go ahead and say it. Some people are left twisters, like only because that doesn't add phase. I twist both ways, both left and right. And a lot of people think that's not a good choice. So that is and I also don't have a problem with the loudness curve. But that's just color. And it is the way that I approach it. But it is different. And a lot of people disagree with it. Yeah.
Okay. That's all right. I mean, I like the fact that you're different, but the biggest thing that I appreciate about Cody is that no matter where I've played with Cody, he fights until that PA is saying something good. Cody never gives up. We from shows at the 7th Street entry to the main room to that place. What was it called? I think it was called Sauce, and then they changed the name to Cause. Like they changed the letter.
Oh, Chaos! Yeah,
they had Cody mixing like in this cubby hole in the wall, like on this. I don't know how good that PA was or not. I couldn't even see.
Great.
But they had Cody in the wall. He had to go up didn't you have to go up a little ladder?
Yeah.
Yeah, he in the wall mixing on this little console. And I think they tried to offer you a job that night.
Yeah, it was actually Alec Proctor was on that, and Alec is now mixing a lot of great people. But he was the house guy there, and it was. I had a good night.
We were with Maida, and that show was incredible. And Cody made it sound like $1 million in this little place, and that's why Cody is my hero, because there's you can always do more. Cody is going to keep fighting until that PA, gives it up. And that's what you want out of a sound guy. You want them to, to battle, because you're in the battle yourself. You're trying to get this music across. You've been rehearsing. If you're any good, you've been rehearsing. You've been, trying to get it together. You put effort into your show, and then to have the sound person match your intensity in the fight to get it over, that's the best you can hope for. So, just in case people out there are wondering why Cody is my number one pick of all times, because I feel like we're fighting together.
I love working with you, Michael. You're the best.
Yeah, well, you know how I feel about that, Cody. The same way. I don't know. We could adjourn here. Oh, Bobby Vandell. Yes, Bobby, tell it. What did Bobby say? How come I can't get it on there? Okay. Cody is the only one that transcends Steve Raitt. Ah ha!
Thanks, Bobby. That's
yes. Sweet. And Bobby, we met before I met Bobby, actually, but not long before. But Bobby was the guy who brought me into the combo. Yep. He introduced me to everybody. He was a judge at the Twin Cities Best Drummer Contest that New Capet had in 1986. And, out of some miracle, I actually won. And Bobby came, hey, man, you need to come down to Archie's bunker, man, and sit in with Dr. Mambo's combo. I'm like, I'm 16. I can't go in there. Man, just come down, man. I'll get you in, man. Nobody's gonna mess with you. So
I sure didn't.
I owe Bobby a lot.
No. Great.
Cody's mixes are never disappointing, said Jared. That's all right, man.
Thank you, Jared.
Yeah, and I miss G-Man. I miss you, G-Man.
That's right.
Thank you for tuning in, man.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, we've congratulated ourselves enough here. Time to call
All
it.
right.
On that note, isn't Cody mixing Saturday?
Yes, Cody is mixing Saturday. We're gonna be together.
That's
So
right.
Saturday,
why don't you remind everybody what you got going on Saturday?
Oh, it's nothing special, just a bevy of, just a cavalcade of some of the best musicians ever been gave. Wow, how do I explain Saturday? Well, if you're a fan of Prince and the NPG, this is the event for you because Levi Caesar, Tommy Barbarella, Tony Mosley, myself, and of course the illustrious Sonny Thompson will be playing down at the Uptown Theater. Nerdy is actually opening for us. He goes on at 8. We go on about 9:30. There's still tickets available at Ticketmaster. You have to search for Together, the number 2, and then Gether. Wow. I guess I'll tell the story as short as possible. Love you back, Bobby. The Diamonds and Pearls box set came out in October to very little like fanfare, like in terms of promotion or, there were no events really. I think there was an autograph signing that I didn't show up for, but like the band didn't get together or play to play or anything. I felt cheated. And I feel like as a member of the new power generation, we were always and still tend to be lost in the shadows whenever the revolution starts to whenever Prince starts to get talked about. The revolution is don't be booing the revolution. They're all right. Spiffy's got his thumbs talking about boo. Nah, man, that's my family also, man. I don't some of those people I know better than others, but it's all Purple family, brother. And they do their thing and we do our thing. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that by the time Prince had 1999, everybody knew how the rest of the story was going to go. And they were fortunate, but they had to work hard. To work with a genius, you almost got to be a genius yourself. So I don't put shade on anybody who's been involved working for Prince, who managed to stay for any amount of time. Did I just lose everybody and I just got
I don't know why that happened. I don't know why we all got frozen Cody too, not just regular Cody. I'm gonna take Cody off and put him back on and see.
Yeah, I'm frozen like a mother.
We still got frozen Cody.
All right, it's okay.
I'm frozen.
Sorry. Anyway, I decided to do something about it, and kind of simultaneously, I had a song I had been working on that I wanted to duet with Sonny, and so these things kind of all converged at once. Like, just sort of I felt the need and responsibility to take more charge over my own contribution to Prince's legacy and do what I feel, needs to be done rather than waiting for somebody else to ask me or tell me, really, because I'm feeling myself lately as more of a leader than a follower. But I think I'm a good leader because I know how to follow instructions, and any good leader knows how to follow instructions. So I've had my experience on the one side, and I've been, proportionately humble about it. And I think that sometimes humility can turn into inactivity or passivity. And so while I'm saying it needed to happen, I'm also not going out of my way to try to blame anybody else for not making something happen, because lo and behold, it gave me an opportunity. And in a lot of problems, there are lots of opportunities. And, a lot of people try to live their life without problems and without confrontations. But I'm telling you that in in problems, in comfortability. I guess this is my mantra. These are the areas where great things happen. It's never when you're comfortable. It's never when you're sedimentary. Who was it? Nietzsche, I think, said, great thoughts are only reached by walking. You've got to move. And in some Christian circles, they will also say, your blessings aren't revealed to you until you start out, till you decide to move, till you start going. You have to go. You have to stop talking about it and make a move. And God will meet you at some point in the process to confirm your plans, if that's what's supposed to happen. Like I said, also, I don't believe in accidents. So, but I do believe that what is a Chinese proverb that the journey of 1,000 miles begins with
one step. Yep.
with a single. Anyway, all I'm saying is that the more upset I got, the more I got convicted, because I realized I was not being a proper steward to my own legacy. So that's what this is really about. So we're dropping the single, which is called Brother, and it's on High Tension Records, which happens to be Ryan Smith's label, who is the guitar player in Soul Asylum. So, it's all in the family, really. It's Ryan's label, it's me and Sonny, and all of our friends. Chastity Brown is making an appearance. The Steels is making an appearance. The Steels is. Dave Perner might make an appearance. We don't know yet for sure. We'll see how rehearsal goes. If he's still into it, I'm sure he'll probably show either way. But so it's like I said, a night to remember. We're just kind of honoring and celebrating Prince's life and his music, and we're dropping this single that's supposed to give you good vibrations and promote love on Earth and throughout the perpetual universe. It's a big room, and and we have high hopes.
Do you know how many tickets you've sold so far?
Oh, I'm sure not enough to pay everybody yet. But that's all right. I'm hopeful, and there's very little competition for that night. And the last few shows at the Uptown have all sold out. So I think, in spite of the construction going on in that area right now, I'm expecting it to be a full house. And whether it's 1,700 people or 17, they're going to get the show of their life, because I'm not going to have it any other way. So don't miss it.
if you're a fan of Prince, or a fan of Michael, or a fan of just good music in general, and you are able to get to Minneapolis on the 20th, you should definitely go. I looked at tickets. They're starting at around $40-$50 for floor, and then going up, I think it's like $100 for VIT. So they're not crazy expensive, even though they're on Ticketmaster. And I know everybody hates Ticketmaster, but sometimes you got to deal with them.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a Live Nation house, so you got to do what you're told.
Yeah. So definitely, I'm hoping to go, and I'm hoping to see as many of you there as I can, and hopefully, even if I'm not able to go, many of y'all will make it. So please come out and support Michael and Sonny and everybody. That's just, I mean, I know it's going to be phenomenal. I'm excited for Michael and for everybody that's doing it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, man. I mean, it's really, it's a continuation of just the sort of love walk I've been on, man. I mean, I don't mean to belabor the point, but it's just, we're living in a day and age where people care about very little, other than themselves. And it's just, I don't know how we're going to make it unless, I mean, we're in it together, really, whether we realize or acknowledge it. Like, everything is interrelated, man. Amen. At the end of the day, it's just atoms and and waves and particles. And if you ask some people, this conversation isn't even really happening right now. So I mean, it just depends on your perspective, but the reality is that everything is interconnected, and the sooner we acknowledge it as a species, the better things will get. And that's just kind of where I'm at in my life, in my mind, and in my heart, in my soul. This is what I want for the world. So if you want more love in the world, then you have to contribute, show more love, give more love. You know, whatever you want to see more in the world of, it starts with you.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Nope.
How do you top that? That's how you finish that.
Yep.
Yep.
The sermon is over.
Right.
Amen.
Let the church say yes. In the meantime, we will be back here next Tuesday for another installment of this.
Oh yeah.
So please join us again on Tuesday with Reverend Michael and Audrey and Cody, Jeremy. Anything you guys got going on you want to shout out? I know Jeremy and Cody will both be involved in Michael's event as well.
Yeah. Cody will be running house, and Colin will be running monitors. JT, I'm hoping will guitar tech and kind of help out, like kind of pinch hit.
We really need to, JT.
I'll just be hanging out.
Yeah.
Audrey, you got anything coming up you want to plug?
Specific, man. Nothing specific. Yeah, come see Michael's gig. It's going to be great. The tune's great. It's going to be a fun night.
Yeah,
That's right. JT mixed the single. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
Take your credit, brother.
Yep.
Jeremy Tapero mixed the single. The Sonny and our duo is called Brothers. In case you've seen it on Facebook or Instagram, that's me and Sonny. We're brothers, with the BR in parentheses because we're we're just two people who feel less alone when we're together. Like we both feel like strangers on this planet a lot, but somehow, you know. Sonny's. I don't have any blood brothers. Sonny's kind of as close as I've come to that in my time on the planet. So that's why we call brothers. One of Sonny's friends said he thought that we both came down in the same pod, and that I was like, yeah, okay, I get that, man. It kind of feels like we did sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So the BR is separate from the others because we're kind of others also. We're just wired different. We're just different people. Like I don't think I can really explain any further than that. See now, I should have gone out on the high note. I had you had to adjourn this stuff.
No one wanted to stop. Yeah.
I let Spiffy talk me back into the web.
Well, Audrey, do you have anything you want to plug?
Just opera coming up. So if you're not
Audrey, do you have anything you want to plug?
Yes. Can you hear me? Am I on?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Great.
Can you hear her? All right.
Yeah. Cool.
Say it.
All right. Opera stuff. Come see Candide if you're in Madison. It's going to be fun and French. It's going to be great.
Fun in French.
Oui.
Exactly. Mais oui.
Well, hopefully I'll see you guys on the 20th. Hopefully I'll see everybody here next week for another installment of this mini-series. Thank you again for everybody for joining us. Thank you, Audrey. In case we don't get you again anytime soon, I'm sure we'll do something in the future, as always. My brothers as well, Cody, Michael, and Jeremy. So hopefully we'll have all you back.
Love you all.
So, okay. Well, let's wrap up. I don't remember how we used to wrap up. Does anybody remember how we used to wrap up?
Yeah, may the Lord watch. But then somebody said you're not supposed to do that. So
okay. Well, let's just see everybody next week. I'm ending the stream. Thank you, Reverend Michael.
Buenas noches.
Yeah. Thanks.
Live long and prosper.